Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Happy holidays, everyone. We are with the Burn Through Catalyst speaker, Diana Bejasa, joining us here. And she, as a speaker, master life coach, and so much more. She's also an author. She's here helping so many people really manifest and live out your dreams. Today, we're talking firm boundaries, build stronger bonds. But before that, we're going to dive deeper, by the way, if you're on the podcast, on the Zoomcast. I see the QR code there. How's it going? Can I try it out?
Yeah, go for it, Jill.
All right, this is cool. Oh my goodness. This is awesome. So we can get our direct link right to you.
Yes, exactly.
All right, tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is you do, darling.
Yeah, so I help high achievers to achieve their goals without giving up the fulfillment, the personal fulfillment that they really want. And so it's a balance of helping them realize that they can have what it is that they truly want professionally without giving up what they want personally. So without giving up their health, their relationships, their quality of life, their peace of mind. Like, how do we have all the things we want? How do we do it by working smarter, playing harder?
Well, that's one thing that you've taught me, let alone a lot, to really live out our life, and we can do it all. We could have it all. Just tell us about the book as well.
Yeah, so I have the Manifest Your Dreams journal, and this is based on a system. This is based on a system that I created for my clients who are very busy. They only have 15 minutes a day, or very little time to work on the things that they really want to. It feels like they have a million things going on. And this is a system that helps them realize you don't need more time, you actually need more focus. And we use some common success principles, but we use them in a really uncommon and unique way that helps them to achieve their goals, to see progress, to feel different, to see their results start to shift in just a month.
Wow. Well, thank you. And it takes, well, just a month you start seeing those changes, right? For today, how do we contact you? What's the website?
Savorlifewithdiana.com. That's SAVOR lifewithdiana.com.
Perfect. And for today, we're talking a little about firm boundaries and how that's helping people build firmer, stronger bonds, correct?
Yes.
All right, break it down for us.
So for a long time, I thought that firm boundaries pushed people away. Today I'm really glad that I have these wonderful relationships that are based on mutual trust, respect, and authentic connection. But I spent years exhausted, overwhelmed, constantly bending over backwards to make other people happy. And that just left me resentful, um, you know, feeling like no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. And I found that really avoiding boundaries is what keeps us disconnected and stuck.
Interesting. Yeah, it's funny because I've always felt stuck. I felt when I do set up some boundaries, I feel a little cruel doing so. But
Yeah.
I got to let go of that. Hey, I'm entitled to have what I want or what I need and to be open and honest about it and not to feel bad or sorry for it, right? You find a lot of people, I'm sure, who put up boundaries are a little hesitant.
Yeah, like I think that boundaries get a bad rap for
Yeah.
being something that um you know that feels almost like we're either like we're pushing people away, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And it's like we think that we have no choice but to break our boundaries to let other people in. And I
Yeah.
believe that instead it's like we can build a structure that allows for people to know how to come into our lives in ways that really allow them to be there for a longer time. Because I think when we break our boundaries in that way, when that resentment begins to build, that never leads to a really long, strong relationship. And it can be challenging, but sometimes the people who don't respect our boundaries, they're not really people we want around anyway.
Yeah, very true. E. Let's move on forward now because you mentioned there the blueprint for true connection. So boundaries are not barriers. Let's repeat that. They are not barriers. So talk about the blueprint a little bit further.
Yeah, so I don't think that boundaries have to isolate us. I think that they can actually help us create freedom to show up fully, authentically in our relationships. But what it is a reprogramming of how we see boundaries. And especially for a lot of us women, we may find that other people have like through conditioning since childhood that we were taught like, being a good girl meant saying yes to other people, doing what other people wanted as opposed to what we really wanted. So we were kind of taught at a young age that it's it's preferable for us to fit into the mold, to do what other people think is right for us versus what we really want. And so anytime that we're really saying yes to what other people want and we really mean no because it's not what we want, we're lying to ourselves and to the people that we care about. And never can we grow a real connection when the base is dishonesty. Like we can't build real relationships on fake yeses, right? Like we think that setting these boundaries is selfish, but they're actually that foundation for intimacy and trust that we want to build in those strong, deep relationships. So while it might seem like saying yes is keeping the relationship alive, the truth is that every dishonest yes actually kills the intimacy, the trust, and the respect that we really want to be building with people.
Interesting. All right. Thank you for that. And Diana, as a coach, life coach, you're working with mostly women, right?
Yeah.
To overcome these types of boundaries. And what are some of the biggest fears do people come to you and mention? What is the fear factor here when it comes to diving in deeper?
I think they fear rejection. I think they fear loss of control. I think they fear losing people, right? Because we
Hmm.
know how important it is to have the people that we love. But when we've learned that people love us for not saying no to them,
Yeah.
it can feel really hard for us then to say no when that's really what we want to say. Um, and so I think that there's got to be a realization that we can't control other people, right? Like so a lot of times like we are afraid to place these boundaries in place because we're afraid of losing control. But the control is really the illusion. The real reason that boundaries feel impossible isn't because other people won't respect them. It's because you don't trust yourself to enforce them. And so every time you allow somebody to break those boundaries, you're allowing them to disrespect you. You're showing them, you're showing them what you're willing to accept.
Mm.
And I think that, it's not really that we're afraid of boundaries. It's we're really afraid of what it means if people don't respect them. I think we're almost afraid of standing up for ourselves. We're almost afraid of losing that person without really understanding, like maybe we don't want somebody around like that who doesn't respect our boundaries.
Mm.
It's like we're afraid of handling the consequences, the conflict, the rejection, the being misunderstood. And the truth is that like rejection isn't a bad thing, it's a redirection, right? So if that person rejects you because you said, "Hey, I don't want to do this. These are the boundaries or the ways that I want to build a relationship." If they're not into that, you really don't want those people around. We really don't. And I think
Mm.
it's like we're afraid of losing that person because or we're afraid of seeming like, we were talking last time, Jill, about being a biatch, right? And like
Yep.
not wanting to,
Yep.
not wanting other people to think that about us or whatever. When like, when it's very interesting, I think, especially for women, because we are when we're when we're clear in what we want, when we
Then
clearly identify that, right? We get named bossy. But if you look at it, men are never called bossy.
nope.
Right? They're never, they're strong, they're firm, they know what they want. They have direction. They're great leaders when they are clear about their boundaries. And for us, it's like, no, 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 now you're a biatch. Now you're difficult to work with, right? Um, you're yeah, you're
Wow.
you're difficult, right? And
It's
then
so true.
how many times even I'm sure in the media industry that term of being difficult to work with gets tossed around as a way to cause people to comply instead
It's
of to set boundaries. And I think when you look at the Me Too movement and all those different things, we can see that um it's okay for us to say no. And there are many ways that we as women are often kind of conditioned into saying yes because we're afraid of the consequences of saying no.
yeah. Wow, that's a whole big issue. That is so true. It's I've dealt with this a whole life in my career with men and women, with me or my friends being more assertive, more this, and then we always seem to get punished in the end. And I'm just hoping this whole mentality changes. It's just like for a woman to speak up, we still, to everyone out there listening, yeah, that's just my opinion, but I know it. I feel it, and it's such a shame because we work as hard and then you have the whole pay gap and that whole situation where we're being paid less because we're women. It's just disgusting, but I'm hoping this all is changing and to learn to
Yeah.
stick up for myself and yeah, and be stronger and be fearless. But I still have that fear in me. I do. I do.
Yeah. It's hard. I don't think it's something that we will ever necessarily get completely away from, but I think that when we see those doors close, that there's an opportunity for us to believe that new doors are going to open,
Yeah.
that there's going to be another opportunity, that maybe that door closed in our face so that we could build the next door that we're looking for. So that we don't create the same situations that maybe other women in the past have experienced. And so for me, I think it's a lot about looking at, okay, if this door closed, what's opened up for me? What
Yeah.
opportunity do I have? How do I not just get to wait for the change that I want, but how can I be a part of the change that I want? And it's hard, when you set boundaries, when someone leaves or when people reject you or when it feels like your boundaries are not accepted, so somebody goes, right? There's definitely like an element of that rejection that like I can definitely relate to, like even in my divorce, for example. But I think that it's a recognition of, okay, if it's not going to be this, what if it could be something even better? It's like sometimes we get so attached to the thing that we want, the job that we want, the relationship that we want, that we sacrifice ourselves in the process. And instead, I think if we set these strong boundaries, if it doesn't work out, what if we could believe that if it doesn't work out this way with our strong boundaries, it could work out even better another way. And
Yeah.
I think when we open ourselves up to that, that's when we begin to see opportunities. Instead of feeling rejected and like this path is closed for us, we can see ourselves as redirected in a different way that is really going to open us up and serve us in an even bigger way.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much. And Diana, remind us how we can reach out to you, please.
Yes, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Diana Bejasa Speaks. And you can also find my website, savorlifewithdiana.com. That's SAVOR lifewithdiana.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And we're continuing now, obviously, talking more about keeping our firm boundaries, building stronger bonds, and build those bridges, as you say, not walls, with trust as the foundation.
Yeah. So if you look at those relationships where we bend our boundaries, we are not only creating distrust with them, we're creating distrust with ourselves. And when a relationship is built on resentment and false connections, that relationship is never really going to stand the test of time.
Yeah.
And when we build it with boundaries, yes, we're blocking certain things, but really in essence, we're blocking the things we don't want. And we're building those relationships then based on mutual respect and honesty. So every time we honor our own boundaries, we are actually teaching ourselves to trust ourselves. And as you begin to trust yourself more, that's where others are going to follow. So it's not an easy thing to do. But again, I think that mindset shift of if I am going to be rejected, what if this is actually a redirection, right? What if like, say in my divorce, for example, what if I lost a relationship so that I could be opened up to a relationship that I'm really supposed to have with a person I really am supposed to be with, right? And it's not that it's not sad, it's not that it's not painful, but when we open our minds up to this isn't the end of everything, this is the beginning of something beautiful and even better, that's where we begin to connect to new opportunity and we begin to create something that's so much better and different than than simply than settling for less than we deserve, than losing ourselves in the process. I know so many women when I've spoken to them who talk about like losing themselves in a marriage, sacrificing themselves to a degree where they look up and they're like, I don't even know who I am anymore. And I think that, is it worth keeping that relationship if you lost yourself along the way? Like the one relationship, one of my dear friends, something she always says that I think is really powerful. She always talks about you being the love of your life and how important it is that you are the love of your life, because the relationship you have with yourself is the longest relationship you're going to have. Everybody else comes or goes. You are the one person who will be there till the end of time for you. And so I think there's a real profound need for us to respect that relationship with self, trusting that when we respect ourselves, others are going to follow, right? And I think that it also is a recognition that, again, we talked last time about that yes and paradigm. So if you didn't catch that
Yeah.
episode,
Yeah.
go back,
Yeah.
look for um, when we're wanting to communicate boundaries with greater clarity and compassion, say somebody asks us to help with something or volunteer with something, we can say, yes, I'd love to help, and I'll need to limit my involvement to this particular part or to these particular hours, or this is how I can help, as opposed to saying, yes, I'd love to help. How can I help you? And letting them dictate what they're wanting. We can say, yes, I want to be a part of this. I want to help here. And this is how I can help. Right. Or yes, especially during this holiday season, right, as we're getting more invitations to go here, go do that, all these different things, we may want to say yes, but we may feel like, oh, if I say yes, and I'm going to end up staying there until like midnight, I'm not going to get any of the things I need done. And instead we can instead of thinking it has to be either or, we either go to the party or we do the things that we need to get done. What if it could be both? And the way that we can create that is by saying something like, yes, I'm excited to join, and I'll need to leave by 7 p.m. And that way we're able to really create boundaries that are not rigid rules, but agreements that honor both our needs as well as theirs. And we really only want, like truly, we really only want the relationships that respect our boundaries. The ones where we're losing ourselves, the ones where we feel our boundaries disrespected, where we feel our wants not met, they're not the relationships we want long term. So while some people say, boundaries make us difficult, they actually make us dependable.
Well, I like that. It's true. They do. And I like the scenario of, I'll be honest, I have an issue with the man I've been dating, and I have two kids, so it's hard because I'm a single mom, and I've been telling him since day one, I don't have much time, and this is my time. And then lately it became, well, you don't have time for me. And I'm like, I told you, I don't have time. Like, I can't be more honest. And speaking of boundaries, can I be honest with you? He's never stayed at my house. My two kids and I still co-sleep, and that's my business. And this weekend, he says, well, when am I ever gonna be able to come stay at your house? And I said, I don't know. I said, well, you can go in the spare room. I just have to clean it up. My bins are all there. I said, no, no, but I want to sleep in your bed. And I'm like, no. I said, my kids are in my bed. I said, I said, well, I've dated other women who have kids and they don't sleep in the bed. I said, well, that's other women. I said, I've been a single mom since day one. There was never a father figure in the house and a husband. So I'm assuming a lot of my friends who are married, they get the kids out of the bed early because husband and wife sleep together. We never had that. It's been me and the boys. And so he kind of tried telling me, like, well, you should really start trying. I have other girls that I dated have done this. And I'm just like, that's them. This is me. They've had other men in their lives. I'm the only single person that has been single with my kids since day one. This is what we do. I said, well, it's not good for them. I said, well, maybe that's your opinion. I said, but it's also what I like. And I want to sleep with my children. And I said, it's like I was just very strict and I set my boundary. I said, you could sleep over if you want, but it'll be in the other room. I said, and then I said, the truth is, I try to get them in the other room in the middle of the night. They always wake up. I said, it is what it is. And I don't mind because one day that's going to change. But this is, yeah, not happening.
I get I
Like,
get
I
it.
was like, yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
that's a
And it can be
boundary. But
scary.
yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, he's going to be mad. But I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I sound bitchy. I sound demanding, but this is what I want. Why should I cower down and do something that you think is right? You don't even know my kids that well. Like, no. So perfect example of boundary setting. I had to lay the law down this weekend. We'll see if he calls me
Yeah.
this week. No, but really,
Well,
I'm joking. But
also, right? Like what you really want, what you're saying there is you want a man who respects your boundaries. And
yeah,
it's like you're setting it that tone of like it's either this or it's not. And if somebody doesn't respect that, they're not, I think there's that space for us to really consider, is that somebody I want to be part of my life? If because it's like I think that in relationships, sometimes it starts with just a small boundary that
yeah,
we break, right? And then all of a sudden we're breaking bigger boundaries and then we're breaking other things. And I think that's where we end up in that place where we look at ourselves and we're like, who am I? How did I become this? I remember in in the process of getting divorced, like just seeing myself and being like, how did I become this shell of myself?
yeah,
How did I lose this confidence in myself? And like I was like, I know myself to be this person and I don't recognize myself anymore because
yeah,
of the ways that
yeah,
I was losing, because of the ways that I was compromising myself. And it's not even necessarily somebody else forcing, but sometimes it's us just simply yielding.
yeah,
So I think that, I'm not saying never to yield. I think that relationships are built on, this back and forth, the give and take, but there have to be places where we say and set firmly what matters to us and what doesn't. And I think, I think our kids are a great example of that in
yeah,
terms of course, this is a non-negotiable. And so
yeah,
sometimes we have an easier time setting boundaries there, but a harder
yeah.
time setting boundaries elsewhere.
So
I
true.
say like it's like well, you have an easier time setting boundaries here. Like, what's the difference? And then oftentimes you'll see that there are stories that come up in the
Yeah,
place where it feels hard for us to set those boundaries. And I think it's about looking at it and saying, huh, what is that story? Like, why do I feel so confident in setting boundaries when it comes to my children and what's acceptable with them, and not so confident setting boundaries at work, or not so confident setting boundaries, in my personal relationships or anything like that. And what you'll notice is you'll have stories that come up. And the truth is that there really is no difference in the relationships. It's simply where you're willing to be firm and where you're not. And we can learn a lot about ourselves, our stories, like our beliefs, when you start to really question and look at like why is it that I'm not willing to bend here and I am willing to bend here. And a lot of times you'll find that fear of rejection, fear of losing people, um, all that other stuff. When the truth is, like, if you look in that other situation where you are willing to set firm boundaries, like, hey, if this person isn't going to be the one, then there's going to be somebody who does respect this and who understands this. So we can start to use that mindset that we have in the place where we're successful and begin to transfer it to the place where we felt less successful setting boundaries in the past.
wow, beautifully said. All right, we still got a few minutes here, Diana. Wow, important stuff today. And
Yeah.
got me thinking, and I'll follow up with you next week how my boundaries are working. But
Yeah.
right, yeah, wow. As we get older, wiser, I think yeah, and have children. I think there's just a lot more for us to, I don't know, makes us feel a little more confident speaking out. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't, but we got to gain that self-confidence, and hopefully, you're helping people become more aware of that at a younger age before the wiseness kicks in.
Yeah, yeah. I think sometimes it's like we've already experienced some loss. So we're like, this loss isn't as big as that. Do you know what I mean? And so sometimes it seems like we can set the boundaries a little bit easier because we're like, I already, I've lost this already. This is not, you know, this doesn't compare to that. So whatever, if this doesn't work out, and I think that that builds a little bit of that confidence. And, I think another thing that's really unique is that where women are not as conditioned to hear no, men are. Um, there are lots of places when we're younger where it's like there's a societal conditioning around like, oh, men ask women out, for example. Women don't ask men out tends to be the trend. It's not always how it goes, right? But again, we see that societally. And I think that there are lots of places where men are kind of conditioned to hear no and to not stop. And there's deeper things behind that where obviously they need to hear no and learn how to stop. Um, but I think that for us as women, that we can look at and understand, like, again, no doesn't mean no forever all the time. It doesn't mean no, this is not possible. It can be a redirection. And instead, I think when we look at things in a way where it doesn't have to be yes or no, and there's, this binary. It's like, what if it could be another way? What if we could say yes, like you were saying, yes, you can sleep over and you can sleep in the guest bedroom. Yes, you can sleep over and it can be this way. Or yes, you can, yes, I can be a part of this event, or yes, I can work on this day and I can do it for 3 hours or 2 hours or whatever. And I'm thinking for myself, even as, I had a friend who recently was like, oh, okay, if you want to be on, if you want to do this with me, I need about 10 to 15 hours of your time every month. And I don't know if I want to give that. So I might say, yes, I'd love to be a part of this, and I can commit, I can commit probably 5 hours. And if that's not good enough, then probably we're not a good fit.
Wow, love it. Well, Diana, we are out of time now. Great conversation. Remind us how we can reach out to you, and of course, help us start, sticking to all boundaries and being firmer and stronger. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so you can sign up for a free consultation on my website. It's savorlifewithdiana.com. You can also find my links on my social media pages, Facebook and Instagram. It's Diana Bejasa Speaks. So that's Diana Bejasa Speaks.
Got it. Thank you so much. All right. Pleasure having you back. And hopefully I'll see you. Am I seeing you before the holidays?
I believe so. Monday.
Oh,
Yep.
good. Perfect. All right, good. Well, thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you, sweetheart. And we'll talk more
Thank you.
next week. And I'll give you my update to how the boundary setting went. All right. Bye,
Yeah.
sweetheart. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.